What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, and just earlier today, we finally got the results of the Brigitte Lore Q&A, which, as I talked about in a previous video, was being hosted by Michael Chu and receiving questions from us via Twitter. So now that all these question answers have been posted on the Overwatch blog, I decided to run through some of the more interesting ones that Chu talked about. However, I do want to also mention a bit of an issue I had with this whole Q&A in general, but I'll get to that more a little later. Also, Overwatch designer Jeff Goodman hosted a Q&A regarding the development and mechanics of Brigitte yesterday, so I'll be talking a little bit about that at the end of this video as well. But anyways, let's jump right on in. So overall, Michael Chu only answered about a handful of questions about Brigitte. Some of the more interesting ones being that during her design process, they actually experimented with a few different weapon types. They tried giving her a sword and even a more traditional mace. However, they ultimately decided on the rocket flail because of how it paid homage to both Torbjorn and Reinhardt, who both use hammers, and of course, they are essentially her two father figures. And continuing with the relation to her fathers, Chu talked a bit about how Brigitte doesn't like Overwatch, in regards not that she doesn't like what the organization stands for, but rather just because of how it treated Reinhardt specifically. After all the hard work and devotion he gave to the organization, they ultimately just kind of kicked him out and forced him to retire, which was likely done with good intentions on Overwatch's part, but it's understandable from Brigitte's point of view why she would be insulted by that. Obviously she cares fondly for Reinhardt, and seeing him kicked out in that sort of way, well, definitely isn't something she would appreciate. And of course, now that she can't convince Reinhardt any longer to stay out of the fight, that is why she is taking up arms herself so that she can do everything she can to support him in combat. Now moving on to some more fun, trivial questions that Chu talked about, we learned that she does in fact like donuts, but specifically loves this thing, which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but after looking it up, it's essentially a Swedish sweet roll. She spends her day tending to Reinhardt's and hers armor and other sort of mechanical things, but in the evenings she likes to kick back and drink with Reinhardt. And probably likes to look at a lot of cat holo gifs. I guess some things will just never change. Anyways, unfortunately, this is about all the really interesting new stuff we got out of the Q&A. The vast majority of the things Chu talks about are basically just reiterations of story bits that we already knew about her. Overall, there's nothing really profound or interesting that we hadn't heard before, and in that regard, I think this Q&A kind of came out a little disappointing. Granted, I personally had a hard time coming up with interesting questions I wanted to ask regarding her and her backstory, because, again, we already know quite a bit of it. The big question that I really wanted answered, and am legitimately surprised that it wasn't even addressed by Chu, was her stance on Omnis. Given that both her father figures fought Omnis during the Omnic crisis, and we know that Torbjorn specifically has an immense hatred for them, well, at least prior to the Binary comic, which I guess at this point we don't technically know how this is played out yet. But regardless, given Reinhardt and Torbjorn's less than positive outlook on Omnis in general, I was really curious to see whether Brigitte kind of picked up on this hatred, or at the very least disliking of Omnis, or whether she had her own sort of modern new age views with regards to their place in society. And granted, I'm sure other people had much more popular questions that they wanted to see answering. I know that there were some questions in particular which seemed a bit too political, so I wasn't surprised that Chu didn't address any of those. However, the fact that he made no mention whatsoever of her stance on Omnis really did kind of disappoint me. Again, that's just my opinion, and it's because that's something that I was really interested in knowing. Overall, I think the Omnis are one of the most intriguing aspects of the Overwatch universe as a whole, and I always love finding out more about them and about how they're treated and just the general perception and place they hold in society. So maybe a lot of you weren't actually disappointed to not hear any more about that, but definitely be sure to let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this Q&A overall. I'll have a link to it down in the description so you can read through all the questions yourself, and so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Now, before I wrap up this video, I do just want to address some major points made by Jeff Goodman yesterday in his Q&A regarding Brigitte's development and abilities, such as the fact that Brigitte and Moira were both being developed at roughly the same time, and spawned from the fact that the game desperately needed more healers. That certainly explains why we got 2 healers in a row. And also he talked about how they're excited to see how her hybrid status as being part tank, part support will end up playing out with regards to the meta in competitive and even just quick play in general. It seems like the Overwatch development team themselves are both excited and optimistic about how she's going to end up playing into the game, so that certainly makes me optimistic as well with regards to how she's going to benefit the meta and overall game balance. Of course, she has only recently come to live servers, and she won't even be in competitive for over a month still at this point, but as with pretty much all new heroes, I am certainly excited to see how she changes things up. Now, perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Jeff Goodman's Q&A, at least in my opinion, is the fact that Blizzard themselves are anticipating her addition to the game to possibly bring about a heavy tank meta. I've seen a lot of people already predicting this, even when she was still just on PTR, as she obviously works very well against dive comps and very well with tanks. And so as a way to sort of preemptively counteract this possible shift in meta, we are going to be seeing buffs to both Mei and Reaper sometime soon, possibly even this week. So hopefully those will be coming out this Thursday, although it does sound possible that they won't actually end up going through to the PTR until next week. As for what these buffs will be specifically, I'm really not that sure. While I was working on my Reaper backstory videos, which if you haven't watched those already, I encourage you to do so, and you can check them out through the card on screen, I played a good bit of Reaper in Quick Play and Deathmatch, not only to get video footage of him, but also to just kind of get a feel for the character. And I have to say, in a lot of ways, he does feel fairly weak. Now, I don't play him nearly enough to know what needs to be changed specifically, so once again, if you're a Reaper main or a Mei main, then I would love to hear your thoughts about what kind of buffs you think they might be getting soon. Now, as a last final sort of speculative note before I wrap up, I can't help but wonder what this anticipated heavy tank meta might mean with regards to the next Overwatch hero, being Hero 28. Given how long the development time is for a new hero, Blizzard is inevitably already working on Hero 28, and probably even knows who exactly is going to be coming out this summer, which is when the next hero is probably going to be released. So will Hero 28 counter tanks? I don't know, just an interesting note to think about. I'll probably be talking a lot more about the next upcoming Overwatch heroes in a future video, so be sure to look forward to that. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Please be sure to leave your comments down below regarding anything I talked about here today. Don't forget to vote in today's poll card, and be sure to leave a like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and turn on notifications to both help out my channel and keep up with all my future Overwatch content. This is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.